Okay, here we go. Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to introduce you to someone, and I'm not going to tell you everything. Normally I do a big introduction and we have laughs and conversation before we get anywhere. But this time I'm not going to do that. I am going to simply tell you that May the 8th is a very, very important date this year, which is 2021, all year. And I am going to introduce you to someone who is going to introduce themselves. So Lise Berube is running a marathon. And it's not just any marathon, and she's not just any person. And I am going to pass the mic, pun intended, to Lise, who can introduce herself, and you can fall in love as immediately as we did. Hi, Lise.
Hi, Christy. Wow, I've never had such a nice introduction. That's so lovely. So thank you for that. Yes, my name is Lise Berube. Excellent work on the pronunciation,
Thank you.
by the way. And yeah, I'm going to be running a marathon on May 8th, which I'm very excited about. It will be my second marathon ever. My first one was last year on May 1st, so just over a year ago. Well, no, not over a year ago. It will have been just over a year ago on May 8th. And the reason that it's special is that I have stage 4 cancer. And last year, after I've had stage 4 cancer for over 2 years now. And last year, after having been diagnosed with a bit more progression, I had cancer in my lungs, my heart, and my brain. And after finding out about a bit more progression last spring, I decided to run a marathon. And my good friend Grace Lore joined me in that endeavor and was my running buddy and ran alongside with me. And we decided to do it. It was a very last minute decision. And we did it as a fundraiser for a very dear organization called Callenish Society, which is an organization, a nonprofit based in Vancouver that provides support to people living and dying from cancer. And so this year we're doing it again. I'm so excited because I've had some stable scans for the past several months now, which is always a huge relief. And it's exactly that. It's just a huge relief every time you get a stable scan with stage 4 cancer. And we'll be running another marathon this year. And this year we've made it even bigger. So last year we ran and we raised $65,000 within a week for Callanish, which was so awesome. We started off because it was kind of a spur of the moment decision. We started off with a fundraising goal of $4,200, thinking if we can raise $100 for every kilometer that we run, that would be amazing. Wow. And we ended up raising, exponentially more than that, obviously. So that was super exciting. And then this year we've decided that we were going to do it again. And so we've reached out to the Callanish community and to the organization to see if they wanted to kind of join us in the fundraising efforts this year. And it's kind of just snowballed into a bit more than what we thought it would be, which has been super exciting. But it's been so awesome because it's made it more of a kind of like a team effort and a bonding kind of experience for different people. So we've got now over 300 people, I think, who have signed up to participate in some sort of way. Not everybody's doing a marathon. Right. People are all doing their own kind of movement. So we've called the fundraiser Move Because You Can. So we're trying to get people to basically just to get involved and feel some sort of connection because, as everybody knows, we're still living in this very kind of weird, socially isolated COVID world, and just a nice way to kind of build some connection and to get out and do things that we can do during this time. Because for me, it's really been about that feeling in February that I think a lot of people had in January, February, that there's not really that much that we can do right now. And it's pretty frustrating and just kind of needing something to keep us motivated and get us outside and get us moving and get us feeling better and help us feel connected to people and doing it for a really good cause.
I'm just blown away by how matter of fact you are about this. You were diagnosed in 2016 with stage 3 at the time, breast cancer, and you were on maternity leave at the time. with 2 kids.
Yes, I was. And I'm happy to talk a bit about that. I was diagnosed in early February 2016. My daughter was born in August of 2015. So she was just under 6 months old when I received that diagnosis, and my son was 2, and I had pulled him. I was at work before, and I had pulled him out of daycare when my daughter was born because I was going to be home on mat leave. So I had both kids at home with me, and I had been feeling very well. Actually, I hadn't had I wasn't sick. I didn't have any symptoms of anything. But I had a little bit of redness and swelling in my breast a few times throughout the fall that I noticed. And I had never had any kind of clogged milk ducts or mastitis or anything with my son.
No family history?
No family history at all. I breastfed my son till he was 2, and I had no issues with that. So I thought it was a bit strange that I would have, anything with my daughter, and she was a better nurser than he was anyway. So, but we just assume it's a clogged milk duct. That's the most common thing. So I'd mentioned it to my doctor. I hadn't even booked an appointment with her. I think it was at my daughter's 4-month check-in. And I just mentioned there had been a bit of redness and swelling, and everything was normal at that point. You couldn't actually see anything, but she was just great. She asked if I wanted to just order an ultrasound just to be safe. And she said it might take a while anyways. And by the time you get the appointment, if you want to cancel, you don't have to do it. So we went ahead and booked it. And then over the holidays that year, over Christmas, it flared up again a couple times, and it was getting quite painful. So I went for the ultrasound, and they sent me home right away, and they said, everything looks fine. And then I received a call the next day, and they said, actually, we'd like you to come back. We want to have another look. The radiologist looked at the images and wants to just have another look and be safe.
Okay.
And then I started to worry. So I really wasn't worried about anything before that. And then I went in and for another ultrasound a week later, and they did a biopsy right there and then. And then as I was waiting for those results, I think that's when I really started to question. And of course, I went down the Google hole and started looking up things. And what kept coming up was inflammatory breast cancer. And inflammatory breast cancer has a very poor prognosis, is very aggressive, is usually only diagnosed at stage 3 or 4 because there's, unlike other breast cancers, there isn't always a lump to be felt. So I didn't have a lump that I could feel anywhere in my breast. My breast was just kind of on and off, a bit red and tender, and felt a bit inflamed at times. And breastfeeding was painful sometimes. So it was not a lot of different factors to be able to identify it. And so they ended up diagnosing it from the biopsy in a lymph node. They weren't able to actually biopsy the tumor in my breast. It was from a lymph node. So it had already spread to the lymph nodes, which is often how this type of cancer is diagnosed. So I got a call. I was actually at a play group with my kids in the building where my doctor's office is also located. So I was there on a Thursday morning, and they called and said, "Can you come in as soon as possible?" And I was like, "Well, I'm at a play group in the building with my kids right now. Should I just come now?" They're like, "That would be great." So then I started asking, I was like, well, should I have someone come with me? Should I call my husband? They're like, that would be a good idea. So then of course I was super anxious, and he was able to come join me for that appointment to get those results, thankfully. And then it was just kind of a big swirl and whirlwind from there because everything happened really quickly. We had, quickly but slow. It felt slow. It felt like it's an eternity because I got diagnosed on the Thursday, and they said immediately, we're going to refer you to a surgeon, and then we need to do all these scans, and they do all these workups to find out whether it's spread to other parts of your body. And it was the weekend before, I guess it was Family Day weekend. It was a long weekend. So the Monday was a holiday. So everything was closed for 3 days, which was very stressful, but in retrospect was good because it kind of gave us the time to do a bit of reading and research and start to process things a little bit. But I think as most people, or a lot of people with cancer would agree, it's those times of waiting for answers are almost harder or worse than actually getting the information. It's that period of the unknown is a really hard place to be in. And
you were feeling fine the whole time?
I was feeling very well. Yes. Yeah. I was never sick. I didn't have any any symptoms. The cancer was diagnosed as stage 3 at that point, so it hadn't spread to any other organs in my body, which probably is, I think, is very common of people who are diagnosed with an earlier stage cancer, because you often do feel well, because everything is kind of localized to that area.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then treatment started. I had CT scans and MRIs and bone scans and everything to diagnose. We found that it hadn't spread anywhere else. So I started some aggressive chemotherapy within less than 2 weeks, I believe, from that diagnosis, and then was in chemo for about 6 months.
So then when did you decide, okay, I'm going to do the marathon? After the chemo?
Oh, no, sorry. This was in 2016. So I did the marathon in 2019.
Right. Sorry. Okay.
So I was diagnosed. We can fast forward though. That's fair, because it's a very, No,
I don't want you to fast forward.
There's a lot of treatments. There's a lot of stuff. So, but I'll do a quick summary of that. Lots of chemo, lots of radiation to the breast and axilla area. I had a bilateral mastectomy, so I had both my breasts removed and all of my lymph nodes from my right axilla, and then which is my underarm.
Okay.
And then I had several other surgeries because of infections and complications. So I think I had 6 or 7 surgeries within that 1.5 to 2 year period. And then after my mastectomies, you get the pathology report back saying whether the chemo has been effective and if there's any cancer left. And that pathology report actually showed that I had a complete response to the chemotherapy and to the radiation, because I had the radiation prior to the surgery as well. So it did show that there was no cancer left in the lymph nodes that they had removed, and there was no cancer left in the breast, which was really good, because that gives you a better odds at survival and kind of better prognosis. So I went after that. I was on like a chemo that lasted until the following year, and then went on some hormone therapies because I was diagnosed as weakly estrogen receptor positive for my breast cancer. So I went on some hormone therapy that basically I got injections to put me into menopause, and then I had aromatase inhibitors, which are kind of hormone blockers on top of that, which was the plan, was I would be on that for 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And then I went back to work. My kids went to daycare. So I returned to work in September of 2017. So a full 1.5 years after being diagnosed, pretty much.
Same job. Same workplace.
Same job. Yeah, same workplace at Island Health.
Yay!
And
thanks, Island Health.
Yeah, thanks for taking me back. Broken and all. And then I have moved on to a different position still within the same portfolio and organization since then. So I switched jobs in 2018. And actually, it was about less than a month after going into my new role there, I started to develop a bit of a cough. And I noticed, and I was kind of just I was just getting back to the point where I kind of felt like I was getting my energy back for real after that whole kind of year. And I think it's a very common thing in cancer treatments that people say it's, they're surprised at how long it takes them to feel like they're getting their energy back and they're feeling normal again. And you kind of think that as soon as treatments are done, you should start feeling better, or like that once chemo's done, you should start feeling better. And people, often realize it doesn't just, you don't just bounce back after that kind of experience. Your body does need a lot of time to heal. And I remember thinking in 2017, when I went back to work, I remember thinking like, oh, I feel like I've got my energy back and I'm feeling better. And whatever that even is, because I think your scale skewed after having kids and being on mat leave and not sleeping and then cancer on top of it. And there's just, what is normal? I don't know. So, but then I remember in 2018, so a year later, thinking like, oh, this is what having energy feels like again. And I just kind of gotten to that point.
Right.
So in that fall of 2018, I ran a half marathon, which I hadn't done. Oh my gosh, I hadn't done in a very, very long time. I think I'd done one half marathon before in my life.
It's okay. I've never done
like
one
10 years before that. And so I started running a bit more and I did a half marathon. It felt really good. And then I did another one later that month. And I noticed that was kind of my point that I remember really noticing a bit of lung issues. I noticed a bit of shortness of breath. I felt like I just felt like not as energetic. And then I started to develop a cough that usually came on more after I'd go for a run or after doing any kind of exercise. And that cough kind of just lingered and got worse throughout that fall. I reported it to the cancer agency. And of course they're like, that doesn't sound like anything to worry about. It was just a cough, and then weeks went on and it didn't get better. So I called them again. And then they did decide to order some tests and some scans. So we did find out in the fall that there were some nodules in my lungs. But they were very small and they weren't kind of ready to call it as anything. So we decided to wait a couple months and then test again and see if there was any change. Mm-hmm. So, and then by that point I was actually quite unwell. Like I still felt okay. I was still working full time. I was still getting out and doing stuff and running and biking to work, but I was coughing a lot and I felt short of breath and I felt these symptoms.
Yeah.
So the diagnosis actually came in January of 2019, where we had done a couple scans. My tumor markers, which is kind of an indication of circulating tumor in your blood, were elevating a lot. And so my oncologist pretty much made the call at that point that she was pretty sure that it was cancer that had metastasized to my lungs. And I still felt unsure. I was still looking for any kind of other explanation. I think I was not necessarily in denial about it. I think I needed to be 100% sure in order, because once you're declared stage 4 cancer, you're in treatment until you die. There's no going off treatment at that point. There's no going back. And I was like, I need to wrap my head around this. I need 100% confirmation, which I knew I might not get, but we were able to do a biopsy of a lymph node in my neck that came back positive, which was good because it did give us a bit more information about the cancer, and it was no longer estrogen receptor positive. So I went off the hormone therapies because that wasn't the cancer that had metastasized. So I went back into treatment pretty much right away within a week of that diagnosis. And I've been in some form of chemo ever since. So it's been just over 2 years now. And then last spring, so throughout that year in 2019, we found out that the cancer had also spread to the space around my heart. So in my pericardium, I had a very large pericardial effusion in a few months after being in chemo. So there was a large amount of fluid that had accumulated around my heart. So they had to drain that fluid, and then found that fluid was all filled with tumor. So I switched a line of chemotherapy at that point. And then in the summertime, we switched again. I tried to go on to more of a lower kind of maintenance chemotherapy, and I quickly progressed as well. The cancer in my heart quickly progressed at that point. So I switched again. And so I've been on that same chemo that I switched to in late August, September, 2019. So I've thankfully been able to stay on that chemo. I have had some progression since. I had progression into my brain, but I had some brain radiosurgery last spring. And that was just before running the marathon. I'm aware I'm talking a lot, so please feel free to jump in any point.
No, this is incredible. There's a couple things I want to dig into, and I don't even know which to dig into first. So I'm going to go take a direction. The Callenish House, how did they help you? Because you are, like Christina said, you're so matter of fact. You're so stoic and strong. Like how were they able to help you? And is that part of why you're able to be the strong woman that you are showing us all?
Totally. Yeah. Thank you, Raquel. And as I said, like I'm sure I could just talk for hours and hours because there is so much to this story. But so I found Callanish Society in 2018. So it was actually before I was diagnosed with my stage 4 diagnosis. And I'd heard about them. It's the cancer community gets, it's like any community when you're not in it, you don't know anything about it. And I was
it's the club you don't want to be a part of.
Exactly.
But when you're in it,
once you are, you of course can't imagine your life without all these people. And so I'd heard about Callenish Society. They're a small NGO based in Vancouver, and I'd heard about them a few times through friends with cancer and the cancer community here in Victoria, and people who had been on some retreats. And I remember kind of looking into it because people were like, you have to do it. It's amazing. Like, they're so incredible. And they offer some day retreats, but also week-long or 5-day long retreats. And I knew a few people who had been on them and had just said it was just incredible. So I had applied to go on one of their retreats, and I got invited to eventually go on the retreat in the summer of 2018. And at the time I was like, I remember being like, oh, I don't know that I need it or want to, because it's 5 days. And like, that's a long time to take away from your young kids and your family, and in the middle of the summer. And it just seemed a bit like indulgent to take that big chunk of time for myself and go do that. But I did it, and I don't know what it was that made me decide to do it. If I was just like, it was, they pitch it very nicely that it's like lots of nice cooked home meals and massages and like this warm environment. And it's in the most beautiful place ever up at Brew Creek near Whistler that they hold their retreats. And I got there really not knowing what to expect or what I was getting myself into at all. I thought it would be more kind of like a spa retreat, a nice little getaway. But it turns out it's actually a lot of work. They make you really do a lot of kind of emotional work and dig into a lot of areas of, loss and grief and fear and a lot of these issues that I think before going on the retreat, I would have thought that I had kind of processed a lot of it and dealt with it and that I didn't really need it. And then after being there, just being so grateful for that experience of having had the chance to really dive into those areas in a really well supported way. And the team of people who run these retreats, so Callanish was founded about 25 years ago. I think it was 1995 that they did their first retreat, and they've been doing generally 4 of these retreats a year where they take a group of about 8 people on retreat. And the team is they're just so incredible and so skilled at what they do. And they've come, I think they've really changed how they do things throughout the year, but also just learned from their 25 years of experience of doing this. And Janie Brown, who's the executive director of Callanish and the co-founder, recently wrote a book about supporting people at the end of their lives. And it's just incredible. They're just incredible people. I remember leaving that retreat and saying to a friend that I felt that Janie was like it was almost like meeting some otherworldly kind of person, like the Dalai Lama or somebody
Beyonce.
That you imagine. Maybe like Beyonce. I'll tell her, she'll love that. But meeting somebody I think I had said the Dalai Lama that I would just assume would be so otherworldly that you couldn't even relate to them, but she's just one of my best friends. And it's just incredible the way that they welcome people and that they're, willing to take people in. And so I of course, when I was diagnosed in 2019, it was only a few months after I had gone on this retreat and had been introduced to Callanish. And it was one of the first places that I went. I was actually in Vancouver for work when I received that phone call of my diagnosis. And I was in workshop meetings the next day, and I left halfway through the day and just went to the Callanish building and, just got welcomed in a big hug. And it was exactly just the support that I needed. And then I've been a bit closer connected with them since that time. And we've done kind of different fundraising stuff with them before. They have a cycling team that does some fundraisers. So I'd done one just after my retreat in 2018. And then in 2019, we actually went to the Yukon and did a big international bike relay fundraiser, which was just so much fun.
Okay. So we have to dig into that. We have to dig into that because it blew my mind that throughout all of this, treatments and post-operative timeline, you cycle, just because I don't think everyone realizes that the Tour de Victoria is 100 kilometers. And I don't think a lot of people know what it's like to bike 100 kilometers, especially in Victoria, which is super hilly.
It was way more than we thought we were signing up for, I have to be honest.
You get there, you're like, this isn't what I paid.
I know. I was like, oh yeah, 100 kilometers. We can do that on the bike. Yeah, no problem. Like 5 hours maybe. And then yeah, I remember around like the 70 kilometer mark, just like feeling like it was like the first time in my life that I had actually felt like shaky and faint from exercising. And I was like, I need a sandwich. And it helped. It actually was. You just need to eat and feed yourself and fuel yourself. And it actually helps.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. I was saying to Christina, I'm like, yeah, no, we need to like dig into this. So first of all, how long does it take you to get through 100 kilometers? At what point does your brain says, I really want to go home? And how do you continue on when your brain says, no, I really want to go home now?
Well, so the Tour de Victoria, the 100 kilometer bike ride was I think that was the first time I'd ridden 100 kilometers on a bike. So I honestly just didn't know what I was doing and getting into. But we did take it easy. We didn't, by any means, we weren't doing it to like break any records or try to like beat our any time specifically. And we rode as a team, and it was just a small team of us doing it. But I got 2 flat tires during that race, and the whole team, we all stopped, and like everybody tried to help us. And so it was really just more of a fun kind of team spirit, which is exactly kind of what this marathon, or the marathon last year and then this year as well, is all about. It's just getting out there and doing something, and even though we're not able to actually come together in community and do it, but just doing something that makes you feel good and having a good time.
But not good. It's like,
but not good.
Let's have a fun, horrible day. Just bring sandwiches. We'll have fun all times together.
Some candy.
And then because the 100 kilometer one wasn't long enough, you decided to go for a 240 kilometer relay.
That was the bike relay. Yeah. So that was the really, really fun experience up in the Yukon that went from Haines Junction, Yukon, to Haines, Alaska. And we had a team, I think we had about 30 people who did it. So we had like 4 different teams, and we were split into legs of it. So we didn't all do that amount. We all did 60.
Okay.
60.
Just 60.
So kilometers, but it was through the mountains. And so it was still hard work and a very long day of riding, and but just so much fun, because it's that like that kind of team spirit of, I would never do that by myself without anybody else. That just doesn't sound like fun.
No. I think for people who are not in Canada who are listening, like these are not like, it's not like riding down a garden path.
This is in Amsterdam.
No, it's not. It's not riding along the canals in Amsterdam. It's different. I know. These bikes have gears on them, and you need the gears for a reason.
Oh gosh. So I think that's, you said that this really fueled you, the Callenish House really kind of secured that sense of community, and then made it so that you all kind of just bunked in and did these fun, horrible activities together. But what did you do daily to get ready? Like, did you have like a training routine? Like, because one of the big things that I'm finding is you've got these huge, you're so amazing at doing these really big picture things. And for all of our audience, we have this conversation with our babes all the time. It's like, what do you do on a daily basis? Like, what do you do when you get out of bed? Because I would not get out of bed and be like, I'm so excited for the 100 kilometers of Canadian riding that I'm going to do through mountains with no sandwiches. Like, I don't know how to motivate or inspire myself at that point.
First of all, you don't ever do it without sandwiches.
Must have sandwiches.
Well, I think, for the marathon, for sure. Yes, we are following a training schedule, and we're getting out there and doing our runs. So to be fair, I think there's I'm not by any means going to say that I'm doing it in any perfect way, or that anybody should follow the type of training that I'm doing. We literally, like last year, I Googled how to run a marathon training schedule. And like one of the first ones that popped up, I was like, perfect, we'll just do this and do what it tells us to do. And I think it's actually something that I have learned more in the past couple of years about kind of trusting a process. And I think that's something that I did also really realize with the work that Callanish has done, and about part of the reason I've gone on another retreat with them since that 2018. I went on one in early 2020, actually just before the pandemic started, for young adults with metastatic cancer. And a lot of it, I think, is just about just trusting the process that you're being put through, and sometimes not really knowing how it makes sense, or how something's going to work, or how some sort of, exercise or whatever it is that you're doing is going to work, but just kind of trusting that it will, and that, people have done this before and have gone through it, and just kind of giving yourself into it. I think for the run training as well, last year, I remember thinking that I've never been a big runner. I've never done more than I had done one half marathon before 2018, I think. And I did, I would run 5 kilometers, sometimes 4 kilometers. I'd do like a 10K as a longer run. And then sometimes like a 15K if I was really in shape and feeling great. And I really didn't, I never would have said that I thought a marathon was a smart idea or something that like human bodies were made to do. I was like, no, I don't think our bodies are made for that.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I think it is, once you start, once you go through the process and you kind of just stick to the training and you do it bit by bit and you follow what the plans and the pros and the people who have done it before and know what they're doing. And,
right.
and I remember being really surprised and impressed last year that we actually were physically that I was able to do it. And I was like, wow, I guess training kind of works.
Google
knew? But I find it's the same. And last year we did kind of speed it up. We didn't do the full training plan because I had just had brain radiation. I thought I was going to have to switch chemo because the nodules in my lungs seemed to be growing more. So I think we kind of just pulled the trigger and just went for it. But also had so much support and energy around it. We had tons of friends from Callenish and friends from here, and made all these signs along our running route for our run last year, and just these encouraging messages, and just had so much that adrenaline that you get from that type of experience, I think really helped. I think this year it's a lot more of a slower, planned out process that we are building a lot of that excitement. And it is really exciting. We've already raised over $65,000, which is what we raised last year in that week. So we've already raised that amount, and we're still going, and we're still, I think, just kind of,
you're a month
really,
out
I think, kind of just getting started. But it's starting to get really exciting. And that's part of the reason that I do it, I think, is that feeling of excitement and, something to keep you motivated and keep you excited and keep you getting you out there when the alternative might be to just sit at home and mope and feel depressed about how COVID sucks and we can't do anything and we can't see anyone and have to go in for chemo and cancer treatments and it's so hard. And yes, it is hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but I think there's also always the opportunity to do things to switch your perspective on that, and to do things that make you feel good and focus on the things that we can do.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because I think that's one thing I really wanted to highlight, was that it's almost like originally you were doing the marathon to raise the funds, and not exclusively to do that. But what it sounds like is, that marathon gave you a structure and an infrastructure for you to have small wins on a daily basis. And then the community just kind of came in around it, and it came in around the community came in around that cause. And I think that, Raquel and I, we have these conversations all the time. Raquel is constantly talking about how to build that community, how to surround yourself with people who are fierce and, fierce friends and who believe in the same things that you believe in. And that kind of bringing together of core values for a common cause, that's so much alliteration, but it's so, I think it really shows like that it becomes a circle rather than a cause and effect. Totally. And I love that it's very circular. It just feels very circular, the way that you can't take one element of this out. The whole wheel works together so well. Like you're just you're like the Beyonce of this podcast right now.
No, Christine, I think you really nailed it. I think it's that, like, it gets that momentum, and then everybody. And I think last year when we did the marathon, it wasn't like, at no point was I like, I'm going to do a marathon to motivate people and to try to get people, like feeling good and inspired. Like that was never, I was like, I just want to run a marathon because I'm really fucking pissed off at my brain cancer and I don't want to let that rule my life. Right. Like it was a selfish as much as it is. It was like, I was doing it for myself. Yeah. And what was so awesome about the whole experience is like seeing how people felt. I was doing it for myself, but I'm like, I'm obviously not gonna run a marathon for no reason. Like I'm just by yourself money for Callanish while I'm doing this.
Could you imagine? Like next year, you'll be like, Kate, this time I just did it by myself.
Oh yeah, no,
at 2 a.m,
and it doesn't count. And if you if you're not tracking it, if you don't have your phone to track it, it didn't happen. So our worst case scenario for Grace Rise, it's like if our phones die during a run and we don't get to log it. What was the point?
It wasn't real. No sandwich for you today.
Yeah. But it really was like, I think that's it. That's what was so cool, is just seeing, like, doing it for your own reasons and then seeing how people felt engaged with it and wanted to be part of it and felt motivated and felt inspired by it. And then that's why this year when we decided that we were going to run it again, I was like, well, I'll touch base with Callanish and just see whether we want to invite other people to be part of it and see. So we reached out to the Callanish community and so many people have like jumped on board, and that's, I think, one of the things that really draws me to Callanish as well, is just like they're kind of, they call it the Callanish yes, is like once you're in, you kind of just start saying yes to ridiculous things, which is what I love so much too. And I think it's why I fit in so well with them, is because, I want to do things. I want to be able to have these experiences while I'm alive. And for anybody with a terminal disease and stage 4 cancer, we know there's no cure for it. That, it does highlight that. It puts a big lens on your life, and it just to kind of say, like, you might not have a lot of time and chances to do things like this. So don't wait for the perfect time.
And you never,
it's never going to happen. Just do it, get out there and do it, and say yes to things and say yes to experiences and try it,
Yeah. I mean, I love what you just said. When you were like, fuck this guy, cancer. Like, I'm gonna do it. It was so defiant. And that defiance led to resilience, which has now led you to this triumphance, if triumphance is a word. But you like having that impetus, we can have different impetuses. I don't know. I'm not good with my words today. Different things can kind of push us off to begin with. It's what we do with those pushes that I think you've demonstrated in so many incredible ways, how you've gone from it being defiant to resilient to really triumphant. And then, and that constant understanding of it's okay to be defiant, because some people are like, fuck this, and then they just get angry, and that anger just stays there. But what you did that I found is so different is that you just developed resilience in so many different ways, like internal resilience. You kind of challenged your body. I love that you were trusting the process as well, because at some point, not to draw any similarity, but on a global scale, when COVID hit, so many people had to learn how to trust in different ways, and anyone who's suffering from any kind of visible or invisible affectation is suffering in a way where they have to eventually, when the pressure mounts to a certain point, you have to trust the process. And I think for you, what's incredible is hearing how that's happened when it wasn't a progressive thing. It wasn't in your family. You weren't waiting for it. There was no indicator. And thank goodness you were so on top of the diagnosis, the detection and the diagnosis. Because you could have just left that. You could have just been like, well, obviously, like I would never have thought when you're breastfeeding, you're not thinking about whether or not you have cancer. Like when you said,
totally,
it just wasn't like, and I think that's all of these
thank
things.
God that and thank goodness that that I was lucky enough to have a family doctor at that point in time who was willing to put in that extra step, which I know doesn't always happen. And I know that I had the right person at the right time who was willing to do that, because I know from a lot of stories that doesn't always happen. And you often have to advocate a lot harder than that and push a lot harder to get that initial test.
Right.
And I don't know that I would maybe have eventually, but I don't know that I would have that early on, because I didn't have that many flags to indicate for me to do it. So that's a piece that's really important.
And early detection, I wanted to ask you about that, because for those people,
it's hard. I mean, early detection absolutely is so important. And I know in a lot of, especially breastfeeding mothers, young breastfeeding mothers, it often gets passed aside as something else, or a clogged milk duct, even a lump or something. So there's often that wait and see. And I know way too many women who have had that happen. For me, like personally for me, with inflammatory breast cancer, there was I didn't have that lump. So there really, and not that this is okay, but there really isn't really early detection for inflammatory breast cancer. It's almost always diagnosed at stage 3 or 4, because there aren't that many signs, and it doesn't get picked up on mammograms. It doesn't get picked up easily. So, I mean, not necessarily, it can, I think, but mine never was. So even when I had, like 9 centimeters of tumor in my breast and had lymph nodes biopsied that were positive, we still couldn't image it in a mammogram, because, and when you're breastfeeding, then the milk ducts, it changes the imaging and stuff. So it's not necessarily, I guess what I'm saying is in my personal individual story, earlier detection wasn't something that would have triggered anything, or that I would have been able to diagnose it sooner. But yes, it's a very valid point for a lot of people, for sure.
But do the checks that you can, right? You got to do the checks. You got to do the checks that you can, and trust that
And to trust your instinct. I think we often kind of think like, no, I don't want to overreact. And I mean, I still do that all the time. I'm like, is this symptom? Is this a chemo side effect? Is this a cancer side effect? Am I sick? Like, what is this? And you second guess everything. And I think that's inevitable. I think you just do that, but to try to, and it's hard too. It's hard to say, like, advocate for yourself, because I don't like to try to it almost puts the responsibility and the blame on the person to advocate for the care that they need. But it is a really important piece of it. And unfortunately, we do really have to work hard to advocate for ourselves and to ensure that we're getting.
It's just a reality.
It's just a reality.
Yeah. I love that Callenish House I love that they have this retreat and this getaway and this kind of celebration, and they trick you with massages and then get you to do this emotional work. Yeah. But we're not taught to be, especially people, I think, those who kind of identify as women and, have more feminine sides to them. You want to take care of other people, and taking care of yourself is kind of always pushed a little bit aside. And I think that's a generalization, but I certainly know that I feel it. I know that Raquel and I have moments where we're like, we got to take care of each other. Like, and whether one person is like swimming in work or not, we're still like, how are you? Though. And I think that I love that Callanish, I would really encourage everyone listening to take some time and actually just have a look at what they do and why they do it, and whether you're suffering from any affectation, whatever that affectation is. Maybe there's something you can glean from the ethos. Maybe there's a way that you can get involved, or I just really encourage you to, I love the concept of it and the retreats and the taking care of your success in whatever state you're in, because I don't like saying sufferers. I think that's also a big verbiage thing where it's like, well, if you are suffering from something, then it doesn't sound like you're going to thrive through it. Whereas if you have a thing and you've got great people around you and you're fighting for sandwiches.
Yeah.
Whatever, however you want to say it.
That's a really good point. And I think it triggered me as well when you said highlighted that fuck you, cancer, I'm not going to let you get me down. And because I think of course that's part of it. We all have those moments where we're like that fight, no, it's not going to happen. But I think that's not how I face my life every day. It's not my general way of approaching it. And
you don't wake up and just be like, fuck you.
No, it's really, but I think it's about finding that balance between, what is it that you need to motivate you in a way that it's going to help you and serve you.
Yeah.
But then also acceptance and finding that balance between accepting your situation and finding ways to deal with it in a gracious way without being just angry and fighting against it all the time. And I think that's something that Callanish has really helped me with as well, is just finding that peace and acceptance with my situation and my reality and the time that I have here. And then also I don't even like to say a balance because it makes it seem like it's either or, but it's finding a way to have that acceptance at the same time as having hope and finding, ways to keep a bit of hope alive. Because, if I look at the statistics, purely statistics, I'm already dead. And if I look at just the miracle success stories, for me, that's not helpful either. Cause I'm but at the same time, it's there's no reason to think there are many reasons to think that I will die in a year or two from now. And there are also, for me, just as many valid reasons to think that I won't. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's trying to find that space in between that you can, live your life. Mm-hmm. And I think a piece around that for me anyways is yes, taking the time to take care of yourself. But I think in that is what I think, one thing that I always say that I think has really been helpful throughout this journey is just having young kids around and having a life and having friends and being busy, and not in a way that it's completely distracting me from my reality and ignoring it, but in a way that keeps me focused on other things. It's impossible to sit around and feel sorry for yourself when you've got 2 kids having tantrums and meltdowns that you need to deal with. And that reality, I think it's challenging. Of course, it's super challenging to be in cancer treatments and, have stage 4 cancer and have young kids, but it's also, I recognize that it has been really helpful for me because it does take my focus away from always feeling sorry for, I can't just sit around and feel sad for myself and feel sorry for myself. And, I have to focus on those other things because there's these people who need me and there's a life that needs me. And I think
you have so much love for them too, right? I feel like that would just overcrowd so many things. When you have so much love in your life, that's a really important piece. I think that's really worth highlighting.
And I think the importance of community and finding your tribe, which I think is something that translates for every situation and every person, but especially in these circumstances. And the thing is, when you find that right community, that's a thread that I just keep hearing throughout this whole chat that we're having. There's people around you who understand, who can support you, who can be excited for you while you're triumphing, who can be there when shit's just hitting the fan. Mm-hmm. And having that community around you that can really understand and be there for you throughout everything good and bad and still hold your hand as you move forward is so incredibly important. And I think now we're very individualistic culture, especially in North America. And so a lot of times that's missing for people. So I think that's something that you found And
you
I
are
think
to those
incredible.
people as
and you
well.
are. Yeah, you're sparking a tribe.
Yeah, no, that's, I think that's so true. I think it all comes back to, that just really highlights, I think, my view on like wanting to have experiences and put yourself out there and do things, because we are a very individualistic society. And I think a lot of, it's of course helpful to take care of yourself and do what you need and take the time for yourself, but only to a certain point that it's helpful, like only until it's not helpful anymore. And I think we all like crave being in community, and I think we want that. And I think we don't have enough of that in our lives. And I think when we are lucky enough to find that and to really reach out to it, it just kind of just help, right? It helps, even, whether you're doing it in a group of like intense therapy setting, or a group that's real, that you're really talking about all your problems and your fears and your grief, or whether you're just finding people that you feel that you can just sit with and be comfortable with, and that will just be there with you.
Yeah.
Janie, the executive director of Callanish, wrote a book, I think I mentioned earlier, and really talks about that too, about like a different experience of people at the end of life, and what that looks like for them, and what they kind of, how they make their peace with things, and how they find community in different ways, and what it is that was important. And I think that's, for me, it's always the most important. It's about the people in your life. It's not about my life is not about me and what I'm doing. It's about the people around me and the people that I support and the people who support me. And I think that's unfortunately the hardest part about trying to come to terms with your death and with dying, is knowing that eventually you have to leave. You'll be leaving those people behind, and you won't be there to support them. And that's it's not about not being here to do your own things and go off and travel the world on your own. It's about not being there to support the people that you love and want to be helping and want to be supporting and want to be there for.
Mm-hmm. But you're here now.
I am.
And you have many sandwiches left to be distributed.
It's so funny. I'm not even really a big sandwich person.
Trust me.
But we are talking about sandwiches today.
You give me one thing and I will run with it for the entire hour. It's just how it works.
I love it.
I'd love to keep talking, but we have to kind of wrap it up at this point. But I can't wait to see how the run goes. We'll be watching. I don't know if we're allowed to, or we'll be.
Oh my gosh, so much pressure. I have to do it now.
I know. And thank you for just being such an inspiration. I love move because you can. It's just amazing. And to all of the people out there listening, you don't have to wait until something happens to you to build a community of people.
Totally. And I'm going to cut you off, Christina, because that's it's just the perfect segue. We're having, we have t-shirts for our marathon and our fundraising run this year. And on the back of the shirts, it says, so on the front, it says move because you can, Callanish. And on the back, it says, there will come a day where you cannot do this. And today is not that day. I think that's just such a perfect, I love full circle of what you just said. It's like, there will come a time when you can't do it. And right now you can. So get out there and do it.
I love
that. Just gave me chills.
That's amazing. I don't know what else to say. I have nothing else to say. That's the end. That you've wrapped it up.
Christina's the wrapper-upper.
I know. And I have nothing. I got nothing on that.
I've never seen this.
we even had that preemptive conversation about cutting each other off and talking over each other, and I just did it.
You did it. Good job. Good job. Lise, thank you so much. This has just been an absolute joy. And we'll be cheering you on And I'm definitely going to get us some t-shirts.
Yes.
Thank you so much, both of you. This has been really lovely.
Thank you.
Yay!
That was incredible.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.